Writing a cookbook as a first-time author is trial by fire no matter what you do. But then what happens when you're mid-book and your editor leaves? And not only that, but your book moves to a different publishing team. Welcome to Everything Cookbooks, the podcast for readers, writers, and cooks. This is Kristen Donnelly, and today I'm here with Kate Leahy. Hey, Kate.
Hey, Kristen.
The publishing world has been through a bit of a turbulent time in the past couple of years. Has it affected any of your projects?
Ever since 2020, the publishing world has been in flux because there's just been a lot of pressures, I think, on editors to continue business as normal. A lot of editors decided, I don't want to do business as normal. Maybe some of them left the profession completely. But when that happens, sometimes books are left without editors. And that did happen to me with my book I co-wrote with Shelley Lindgren, Italian Wine. It's a 10-speed book, but for a couple of months, we didn't have an editor on it because they were hiring somebody to fill a position that had been left. I've had editors change, but not midway through a project. Usually an editor will stay through the whole cookbook project. And then I've worked with editors who have left the publishing house, but not midway through a project. So fortunately, we were an early point in the book. I don't think I had submitted the manuscript yet, or maybe I had just submitted the manuscript, but kind of makes you a little nervous because you're like, who's going to help me shepherd this book to the finish line? Are you just going to find the first person off the street who thinks they can read a book? There is that little fear.
Yeah. And sometimes publishers do go through either rebrands or they close imprints. So imprints are basically like little brands within larger publishing houses. So they might close an imprint and start another imprint. That does happen. But today our guest is somebody who really experienced kind of a wild time.
I think she might have a hat trick in publishing shenanigans because she not only had an editor leave, but she also had the next editor sort of temporarily leave to go on strike. We'll save the spoilers for the interview. But then she had to move to a whole nother imprint. So that's the hat trick. So I don't know. You should get awards for that or flowers or something.
Yeah. So today our guest is Michelle Braxton. She is the author of the cookbook Supper with Love. And she is the creator, recipe developer, and photographer behind the blog Supper with Michelle. She is just also a lovely person and reached out when her book came out and was telling us the publishing story. And we were like, yes, we have to have her on so we can hear more about it. And I think she'll also bring a lot of value for first-time authors because Michelle is a first-time author. She's somebody who didn't necessarily know she wanted to write a cookbook. She wasn't somebody who grew up thinking, I want to write a cookbook.
Right. And despite all the sort of publishing shenanigans, the book is beautiful. It came out. It's out in the world and it's finding its audience. So it's a success story at the end.
And you never know. I mean, that's the other thing. You would never know that it went through all this turbulence. Great. Well, let's go talk to Michelle. Welcome to Everything Cookbooks, Michelle.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Congratulations on your new book.
Yay, thank you. It is finally out in the world.
I know you write about this in your book, but just tell us a little bit about how you got started as a food creator.
Well, a little bit over 10 years ago, I began to share images of my dishes that I would make for my partner, Alex, and I. I would share those on Facebook and Instagram and Instagram at that time was kind of new. To my surprise, people started saying hey, Michelle, that looks great. Where's the recipe? And so after that, I got a lot of encouragement from friends and family. So I decided to start a blog so that I would have, a place for those friends and family to be able to get those recipes. I never imagined that it would go from my blog to, millions and millions of people now, and then now a cookbook. 10 years ago, it just started with encouragement from friends and family.
Wow. That's so cool. Because you do hear about some creators starting, and it's very strategic, they're like, I'm going to start this blog and I'm going to do all these things. And then hopefully within 2 years, I can make this my full-time job. And it's cool to hear that it was so organic for you.
All right. So recently I met with Susan Puckett, who's another cookbook author. She was saying how organic my transition, through this food industry has been. And she says, all her community is organic. She kept using that word. And I said, no, I'm not an overnight success or anything like that. This has been, just over the last 10 years. And it's really just on the side because I work full time. And so when I'm developing recipes and doing social media content creation, it is really in my spare time, not full time at all.
Oh, wow. Even now.
Well, I think that's something that we don't talk enough about. I think sometimes people think, oh, that person has a cookbook or that person has this great website. Oh, they must just be doing this all day long. I mean, a lot of us have to juggle all these hats just to, because it's not how we make a living. And I think that's actually really fascinating because you look at your website, you have so many recipes. I mean, how many recipes now do you have on your website?
Maybe 100 or 200. I recently redid my website, just in lieu of my book coming out, and I deleted like a lot of the old recipes on the blog just because I just wanted to make it look all nice and shiny and pretty. But but not a lot. And because it's something I do in my spare time, I just wanted to be more conscious of the type of recipes that I had on the blog. And I took a break away from the blog basically for the last 2 years, and I wasn't posting as much as I had been in the past because, something kind of has to give. If I'm working full time and I'm writing a book for 2 years and, trying to come up with content for the blog as well, and have a life.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the most important.
And not go insane.
Yeah.
So the blog was one that, I kind of put on the back burner. And so I decided that I would focus on content for social media so that I would still stay engaged with my readers and my community on social media. So they're not like, crickets, where's Michelle? What happened to Michelle? And keeping that engagement level and that excitement about the book coming, that was important to me. Building those relationships with everyone.
That's smart because I do feel like publishers put so much emphasis on Instagram. So if you're going to say something has to give, then I guess it wouldn't be Instagram, right?
Right.
No, my blog wasn't monetized, so it wasn't or it's currently not monetized, so it wasn't I was going to take a financial hit.
Oh, smart.
Yeah. I think that's something too to think about. Sometimes we do things earlier on in our, like, say, food writing journey where we're meeting those people or we're getting those skills. And it doesn't mean that we have to do the same thing for the next 20 years. I think that's smart. Like, you did this, you started growing and building it. But then, a book is a completely different opportunity. It takes a lot of energy to create, which we're going to talk about.
Yes.
And doing the book, blog, working full time, and doing Instagram. I'm kind of happy to hear that you realized, this isn't like you can't do it all. I think this is something because I struggle with this of trying to figure out how do I do all the things. And sometimes it feels like you're playing whack-a-mole of like, all right, we'll finish that one. So you don't have to do all the things. You just have to be strategic about what you keep doing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I agree.
And so how did the book come about?
I think the book was maybe just a normal progression. So I was approached by my agent, and she just sent me an email out the blue asking, have you ever thought about writing a cookbook? And I was like, hey, you know what? I was in a place, at the time where I was ready to write a cookbook. That was like chapter 1.
That's so cool.
Yeah. I didn't always want to write a cookbook. I'd say that had you asked me if I wanted to write a cookbook years ago, I probably would have said no. But again, I have a supportive friends and family and network of, people behind me and readers who are always saying, okay, so when's the cookbook coming out? When are we going to get a cookbook? After years of developing recipes and sharing them on my blog, the idea finally grew on me that, okay, yeah, we're going to do this.
How did you shape the idea for your cookbook?
If I wrote a cookbook, I knew it would be more of a reflection of what I shared day to day, normally with my readers. This is what I'm known for. This is what they enjoy my recipes for. So I wanted my cookbook to be the type of recipes that I make every day. Because of that, the concept of my book, it did present challenges in trying to sell that concept to publishers or editors, if you will.
Was it because it was too general, or?
So it was a general cookbook, but with a focus on pescatarian and plant forward recipes. So that it had this twist. It wasn't just general. And so I don't know. I think I got a little pushback from that concept, or maybe I did get swayed into more of a single subject cookbook. I don't know, but I stuck to my guns. This, if I was going to do a cookbook, you never know I don't know if this will be my last cookbook. It's my first, but I don't know if it will be my last. But if this is my last cookbook, I wanted it to be something that I truly envisioned. So I stuck to my guns on that. So here we are.
Got it. Were they almost asking you like, oh, would you consider doing a single subject instead? Or I guess I'm wondering like what that pushback looked like a little bit, if you don't mind getting into it.
No. My book, when my agent sent out the proposal, I got several no's. It's the whole we love Michelle, but not really digging the concept thing. But I did get several yeses. And so ultimately my book did go to auction. I met with originally like 5 publishing houses, but 4 decided that, they wanted to do a cookbook with me. So after we got the offers back, I had 2 publishing houses that were gung-ho on my concept, and then I had 2 other publishing houses that presented 2 different type of concepts for cookbooks.
I see.
And so I went in the direction of the ones that were digging my concept.
Yeah. I think this is good for authors to hear. It's a question I get a lot. I think sometimes people get so afraid of like, what if the publishers don't like my idea? And I have seen that before, where sometimes publishers are willing to say, are you willing to shift your idea a little bit? And some authors might be totally willing to do that. Sometimes they might even like the direction better. But I think it's also good to hear an example of somebody who's like, no, this is the book I want to do, and you stuck to your guns.
I was also fortunate. I mean, a lot of people, they may not have 4 offers on the table.
Yeah, 100%.
Absolutely.
And, I was fortunate in that regards, where I had the opportunity to make a choice. I had a decision to make. Some people might only have 1 offer, and they're like, well, should I take it, or should I just say no and wait patiently to see if another offer will come out, or just keep on sending that proposal out to, different publishing houses. And, I just was in a situation where my agent was like, you've got all these offers. And I was like, what? I didn't know if this is my first cookbook. I didn't know if that was a good thing, or, I didn't know really what to expect, but she was excited. And so, naturally I was as well.
Cool.
It's interesting. I think what you're saying about knowing that you might write, 10 more books, or this might be your one book. And what if you did decide you shifted and made it like a different subject? And then you would have always wondered, well, what if I just did my big book? So
exactly.
Yeah.
The what if?
Yeah.
Life is too short.
So true. So tell us a little bit about what happened after you click with a publisher.
Yeah, I decided on my publisher. With that, you're weighing the options of the publishing house, the actual editor themselves, the concept of the book. Are they going to take the book? The money also comes into play as well, so you're weighing your options when it comes to that. So ultimately, I did make that decision after weighing those different options. And so I went with Harper Design, which was an imprint of HarperCollins. I was really ecstatic to be working with HarperCollins, major publisher, incredible backing with HarperCollins. So I was 2 months in after I signed my contract, and my editor left the publishing house. My editor, which then this is one thing that I would highly recommend for, writers or authors. don't get attached to your editor because they may leave. And, the idea of my editor leaving, that was not something I would have thought would happen. And so it took, several months for my editor to be replaced. Well, and in the meantime, I was also assigned a recipe editor to assist me after my manuscript was submitted. They did eventually fill the position. And then a month after they filled my editor's position, that individual went on strike with HarperCollins. I think they were on strike for maybe 2 months. HarperCollins,
wow.
All the employees, some of the employees. And so that, impacted a lot of individuals. After she came back, I was notified that HarperCollins was closing my imprint.
Oh my gosh.
And so it took maybe another month or so before I was shifted under William Morrow, which is an imprint of HarperCollins. And then I was moved under Harvest Books. And so I was assigned, I lost my team, my old editor, all of my editors, associate editor, senior editor, assigned an art director, and assigned a whole new, team of individuals. That was a little challenging, in that process. It just felt like you're like, okay, now what else can happen, in this process? But I still had the same copy editing crew, which was great. And so at least with the copy editing process, that remained the same.
Well, did your deadlines ever change in all of this? Because I'd imagine I would find it hard sometimes to know, okay, I don't know who I'm writing this for or who my editor, who I'm going to be working with, but I still have this deadline that I have to figure out. So did you know that you still had this deadline and no matter what, somebody was going to publish the book?
Yeah, because I was worried. I mean, initially I was thinking, am I still going to even have a book deal?
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
I was kind of worried about that, but the deadline they did remain the same. Some things got pushed backwards or forwards, just depending, but, for the most part, everything, my book release, I think that got pushed out. I submitted my manuscript in November. So in hopes that, maybe in a year that I would have a November pub date. Mm-hmm. But my pub date got pushed to January.
I see.
2024. Mm-hmm. Oh gosh. It's been such a wild time in book publishing. I mean, I guess all kinds of media and publishing.
You're the first person I'm talking to who got caught in so many publishing trends all at once.
I know.
Not only, so I've heard stories about what happens when an editor leaves and then you're waiting for somebody else to champion your book in the house. So that's one incident. But then I've also heard, okay, maybe an editor goes on strike, but they're coming back. But I haven't heard an editor leaves, an editor goes on strike, the publishing house decides to close an imprint. Yeah. And then you're still there and you land at a great imprint. But tell us a little bit about how you worked with your agent in all this, because I would assume that an agent would be really crucially important. And it would be one of those situations where if you were unagented and trying to navigate this without an agent advocating for you, it would be really, really challenging to know even who to call, who to talk to.
Right. Yeah. My agent was amazing. Especially for first, this is my first cookbook. There were, so that I didn't know how to navigate through all this. And so having an agent was definitely a pro of having them through this process. She definitely advocated for me, particularly when the publishing house closed the imprint. But she was awesome. I mean, she helped me through the entire process. And, I know a lot of people weigh the pros and cons of having an agent to not agent. But I highly recommend it for a first-time author. After you've done it, at least once, you're kind of like, okay, I might be able to do this, by myself, maybe, but no, I mean, it's a wonderful thing. I think it's worth having, especially when you go through different things like this. And then a lot of times the publisher, they prefer to talk to the agent as opposed to the author. I found, because when we were going through this process and, they were talking to her and not me. I'm like, can somebody tell me what's going on?
I think because it's more emotional for the author, maybe. And probably just the terminology, too. Right. There's probably like little legal things to figure out.
They can speak their shorthand.
Exactly.
Hi, I hope you're enjoying this episode of Everything Cookbooks, but it does take resources to make it happen. So I'd like to invite you to help us keep the lights on. For ways to support the show, go to everythingcookbooks.com/support. There, you'll find links to any upcoming insider events where we go even further behind the scenes of the cookbook publishing world. You can also leave us a review, order books through our affiliate page, check out our t-shirts, sweatshirts, or other merch, or just buy us a round of coffee. Every little bit of support really helps keep the show going. And thanks for listening.
You mentioned a recipe editor, and I remember, Michelle, when you were working on your book, at a certain point, you asking questions of your audience in your stories about ways people preferred that you call for ingredients.
I was right in the middle of the editing process.
Got it.
Yeah, I did numerous polls with my readers because they're the ones that are going to be utilizing these recipes. So getting their feedback was very important to me, and engaging them through this entire process. So I did several polls, and then one poll was asking them specifically about like a head of romaine lettuce or a bunch of kale. And I wanted to know, because these sizes, they vary so widely much in size. So, a head of romaine lettuce may be thin or larger. You can get a big head of lettuce. But anyway, so basically it boiled down to, in my cookbook, I may call for one head of romaine lettuce, and then they preferred that I also list how much in cups. So it may be one head of lettuce, roughly chopped, 6 cups. Because they wanted to know, well, how much am I shopping for? And then how much does the recipe call for? And same thing when it came to, a bunch of kale. A bunch of kale can be small or large, depends on where you get it from. To me, there's not really a standard size when it comes to that. So I listened to my readers and made sure that I wrote it the way they preferred.
That's so smart because, my instinct would just say like one bunch kale, parentheses, 8 ounces, but people don't like scales.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, so they said with spinach or arugula, because the way it's sold, they wanted the ounces.
That's true.
Because it has it on the package. It's, it's a 5-ounce package of spinach. And so they know, well, half of this is 2 ounces, 2.5 ounces.
It's so funny now we memorize, how it's like, okay, I know that a bag of baby spinach is 5 ounces because you had to write a recipe where you're like one bag baby spinach in parentheses 5 ounces or 5 ounces baby spinach, approximately one package, etc. You start memorizing these things. I know. I'm so sorry. Also, I noticed there's also grams and milliliters in your recipes in the book, and not so much on your blog. How did that come about?
That was through the copy editing process. And even through my copy editing process, I just wanted to go back and make sure, because sometimes with this process, and just FYI for authors, I'm sure you all know that sometimes you have to just, like mayonnaise, a half a cup of mayonnaise, you want to make sure that half a cup of mayonnaise is the same amount through your whole book. Because sometimes, just trying to catch those little things, or sour cream, or just everything in...
Right, like 118 milliliters or whatever it is. It has to be the same.
Through the whole book. But yeah, that was the decision on my publisher to include that because my book is sold, outside the U.S. That helps all my readers. And I have a large community in Canada and, other places. So cool. I was happy that they included that in the book.
Yeah. Do you have a good sense of who your readers are?
Initially, I was more concerned about it because I think I was more self-conscious. I was trying to be so... What I'm still concerned about is that I wanted to make sure that my recipes are for everyone. They're inclusive, and that you can find the ingredients pretty much at your local grocery store, Piggly Wiggly, Walmart, Kroger, wherever, farmer's market. And so I took that on, the same thing with my cookbook, that, there might be a few of those specialty ingredients that you can maybe get off of Amazon, but, I just wanted to make sure that anyone could make my recipes or substitute the ingredients if that ingredient was not as easily obtainable. But my readers, I think they're just everyday people. Every day, I have a lot more women readers than men. And as far as the demographic, I think the age groups might fall from 30 to 60. And they're all over the world.
Wow.
So cool.
when I'm looking at the blog insights, it's people all over the world, which, to have that impact on so many different people in the world. That's just an amazing thing, and something I'm, really proud of.
Absolutely. I'm curious about your recipe list and how you came up with it, and whether it was the same recipe list that was in your proposal or if it changed because you were collecting these recipes, you had this blog, and then you had to sort of figure out which ones are going to go in the book. I'm looking at like the chickpea feel better soup, just also the idea of like making a meal, just like a baked potato and salad on top of each other. Like there's just really some fun, playful. And I'm just like, why haven't I thought of that? That sounds perfect for dinner. These really, really great ideas. How did you synthesize all these ideas?
Well, I've had a running list for years of, recipes that I know that I would want to include in my first cookbook. So that was first. That recipe list did grow, but then it was quickly shortened after I started writing my cookbook. So in the proposal, I originally had, I think, 52 soup recipes. I wanted a soup for every week.
Oh,
yes.
So no wonder they're like, can you just do a soup book?
Exactly. But in my contract, I was only granted 240 pages. I think I originally it was over 100 recipes. And so there was no way that I could fit over 100 recipes into 240 pages and include an introduction and, other pieces of front matter and back matter of the book, right, and the index. So I cut 26 soup recipes. And so I was like, okay, well, then you can have a soup for every other week. And then, just cut a lot of the other recipes in the book. But the recipes were, they were family favorites, a few blog favorites, and then I just wanted to make sure, again, I had recipes in there for everybody, just a combination of good, salads, soups, what I'm known for a lot of, and then suppers, brenners, what I call breakfast for dinners, brenners, and bowls and sandwiches and pizza and stuff. So, just, again, on brand for, Supper with Michelle.
That's cool. And have there been favorites?
The butternut squash with halloumi croutons, that's a popular one. One that I know is going to be popular in another couple of months, which someone's already made it. So that's kind of like, we're not even in tomato season, but my panzanella-ish pizza. It's a very simple recipe to make, and they seem to really love that. That's the thing, is there's something in there for everybody. So it's just like people are taking little bits and pieces. And that was another reason why I wanted to do a general cookbook, because these recipes, I provide so many different variations and substitutions. So no matter what the season is, you can substitute a lot of these ingredients based on the season and really make these recipes your own. But it's interesting to see them pop up, and people tag me, when they come through. People are posting them on Amazon and
great.
Things like that.
I love the page that you have in your cookbook too about like as you cook and dance your way through this book, and you kind of explain. I think one of the challenges, Kristen and I have talked about this, the challenges for cookbooks is that people are coming to a cookbook from all different levels of understanding how to cook. So how do you kind of make it simple, but not too simple for people, but also simple enough that anyone can cook from it? And so you're sort of like make ahead tips, Michelle's tip, freestyle it. Like you have these and then you explain why and how to follow those. And then you even like provide a soundtrack. I don't think I've seen a QR code for a soundtrack. I've seen like sometimes, listen to these songs, but like here it is, like, you want to also dance in the kitchen while you're cooking? Listen to this. It's really, it's a really kind of smart thing. Tell us about like the design of the book.
I was all hands on with the design of the book. Laura Police was my graphic designer, and I'm very grateful because she really took my vision for, what I envisioned for the book and just ran with it through the colors and the concept, the textiles, the texture, fonts, the layout of the book. One thing, with Laura, I only had her for 2 passes through, through the copy editing process. And so I lost her right after the second pass. So it was kind of like, like, wait, Laura, wait.
Oh gosh.
It was my book. It was, I was like, I had a definite vision of what I saw this cookbook to be, and from the photography to the design, and the color scheme. So it speaks to my personality. It's vibrant, it's lively, and I just wanted to provide that warmth and feel good feeling when you pick it up. That's what it is.
That doesn't always happen, that you can be as involved with the design. And I love the cover. I feel like we're starting to see this sort of design a little bit more, but where it's not a full bleed photo. It's like the photo is sort of inset. And then there's this gorgeous, gorgeous pink. I love, too, that it's like you in action, like the shot is you in action. It's not a finished plate of food. The way the light is, there's like sunlight dappling, and it's a beautiful, beautiful cover. Were you able to be involved with the photo selection for the cover?
Yeah, they asked me what would be my ideal photo for the cover. I did submit several images, but for some reason, that is the one that really resonated with me. I felt like it told a story, and it just wasn't your typical cover. Maybe there's some pros and cons to that cover, but nevertheless, I still felt like it was the one that I felt like it would resonate with other people as well. Because, growing up, that vision of seeing people in my community or elders picking green beans or shucking corn or shelling peas or cutting up collard greens, that was just something that I saw a lot of growing up. And that connection, that visual connection, I felt like that would resonate with other readers as well. Whether it's, maybe potentially seeing your elders, your grandparents, your mom, dad, whomever, auntie, uncle, whatever the case may be. I just felt like that would be something that may resonate with other people. It was different, but I just really loved it.
Yeah, I love it.
With your book, too, did you always have an intention for it to be really personal, having this? Because your introduction, you really talk about your life, and you talk about your mom a lot. And I know I think in the introduction you said this was really hard. Tell us just a little bit about what that decision was like, or what that process was like, because I imagine it's hard to write about yourself.
It is. It is. It's hard to be vulnerable and, share your personal journey. And I think initially when I started writing the book, I didn't know about that part. I didn't know what I was going to say in the introduction. I think that was something that evolved the more I wrote the recipes and, started writing the head notes and really, digging into, the title of the book, and what I just really what did I want readers to take from this book? Was it just going to be about the recipes? And I made a decision that no, this book, is far more than just the recipes. I mean, this is my personal journey, and this is part of my life. Sharing, the note about my mom and, just getting personal with that. I just felt that was important to share with readers so that you really get a feel of the journey. It didn't just start off with the blog.
Right.
It's not an autobiography, but it's just a little, a small synopsis of, just what happened, within the last couple of years.
Right. Which adds another layer of just complexity to the book.
Yeah, I've gotten so many emails and messages and saying, that part about your mom just made me cry and cry. And I was like, I'm sorry. but I was crying and typing and crying and typing, writing, that piece. And even, going through the copy edit process and having to, relive those moments. That was challenging.
Absolutely.
But I did it.
You did it.
You say in the introduction that, you're not the same person after doing this book. Was that part of it?
Yeah. I mean, that piece, I just felt like I was still in the midst of grieving the loss of my mom. I was in the beginning of writing a cookbook. You have all these fears and you're nervous and you have anxiety and you have self-doubt and, you just go through 1 million emotions of, beginning to write a cookbook, which I don't think a lot of authors talk about through the whole process, really. But coming out of it, I just feel proud. I'm proud of the body of work that I accomplished, and I'm so happy that this is part of my legacy. And it just, it doesn't stop after Pup Date. And it's
Right.
something that's going to live on forever. So I'm excited now. And then now it's out.
Right.
It's out now. So.
Right.
And so now I just want to tell everybody about it.
Yeah.
Everybody's probably tired of me talking about it.
Nah. That's what you authors always feel. I always feel like no one wants to hear. It's like, yes, they do, because they might have not remembered, or they don't mind. Tell me a little bit about promotion for the book.
Well, locally, I've done several book signings, just to capture my local peeps here in Atlanta. But on social media, one thing I wish I would have had some advice on maybe early on is, and one thing I kind of recommend for other authors is, while you're recipe testing, take as many pictures and video footage while you're recipe testing, because I feel like that is media that you can use while you're promoting. I didn't necessarily do a great job of that. Hindsight, I would have been like, oh gosh, I should have videotaped all this stuff, because now you're having to remake, a lot of this to share, through social media channels and things like that. But as far as book promoting, my publisher, I'll be doing several book engagements, book events. I'm trying to do some things where I'm personally reaching out to, because again, the publisher will only do so much. And basically after the first month or month and a half, they're like, okay, yep, bye, see ya.
See ya.
Good luck.
Right.
So now I'm on my own, and seeing, reaching out to different book festivals and things like that to participate in those, see if I can get on panels and things like that. Also, just to network, I'll be attending, several conferences to network with, different people in food, any and everything, to try to promote my cookbook. Because again, it's not going anywhere. And I don't necessarily, I think initially I just felt like a rush, like, oh, what else can I do? But gosh, it's only been out a month. So now I don't feel that angst or that anxiety anymore. So now I feel I can just kind of take my time and let things be a little bit more organic and just happen and fall in place.
Which is how your career has worked, right? It's like, the slow burn rather than the...
Yeah, exactly. But one thing I did find, I'm not a well-known author. I'm not a celebrity chef or anything like that. So I'm not doing a book tour, but I will try to do some traveling and maybe do some drop-ins, at different bookstores. We'll see.
Right. Well, and I would imagine, too, this book just has so many very summery kinds of recipes, like the colors and the food photography just lend themselves to, say, spring, summer. So I could see you promoting this book all year long. I think sometimes we feel like we have to jump to the next thing, but sometimes it's maybe better to just really focus on that one thing you spent so much time making. As we're wrapping up our conversation, do you have any words of wisdom for somebody who's a first-time cookbook author? Anything that you wish you had known going in?
Well, one thing that was very helpful for me was definitely listening to your podcast.
Well, thank you. As
soon as it came out, I was like, okay, that's the plug. Okay. No, seriously, I found your podcast to be extremely helpful. And I mean, because you talk everything from front to cover to things you don't even think about. I absolutely love your podcast. So yes, that would be number one.
Thank you.
I feel like, anyone that's even thinking about writing a cookbook, I think you just need to have a clear vision on what it is that you want to create with your cookbook. Have a strong idea of who your audience is, your readers are, what you visualize your cookbook to be from front to cover. Write out the concept for your book. Write out the table of contents of your book. Write out the recipe list for your book. Because, at the end of the day, you're the person that has to sell it. You're the person who has to promote it, your publisher and your PR team and your marketing team, they will only take you so far. But you're going to be your biggest advocate. You are going to be the one who's out there in the trenches selling your book. So, have a firm idea of what your book is about. It's just like selling a product. Yeah. Your product is your book. The more confident you feel about what you're selling, the easier it is. It just comes, it flows. Anything that you can do beforehand, just like what I was saying, while you're testing your recipes, try to set yourself up for winning in the future. Think of your future self.
Yeah. And that promotion, it's such a good point.
Yeah.
So smart.
Good advice all around.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate y'all.
Thank you for listening to Everything Cookbooks. For more episodes and ways to contact us, go to our website, everythingcookbooks.com. The show is also available on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your audio. And if you like what you hear, please leave us a review. It really helps other people find the show. Any book mentioned in the show can be found on our affiliate page at bookshop.org. Thanks as always to our editor, Abby Circatella. Until next time, keep on writing, reading, and cooking.